Today, we are here hoping to celebrate the very extraordinary life of a lady called Malak Nemati, whose birthday we celebrated this very same week on the 11th, which happened to be the last Wednesday. Thus, we are gathered here to discuss her works, and we intend to celebrate her achievements and honor her memory. My talk is going to be split in two parts. The first will cover her background, her learning process, and her achievements, and I will conclude with one of her poems. In the second part, we will attempt to set Malakian philosophy in the context of virtue ethics. And then we shall wrap up with just a few words to encourage all of us in this audience to follow in the footsteps of this very extraordinary person. At the time of Malakian's birth, women were considered inferior in every respect. They were not allowed to participate in any of the meaningful aspects of the community life. Instead, women were raised to be subservient and fully dependent upon men. So at an early age, they would be given household duties to be trained for marriage. Nonetheless, in opposition to local traditions, Malak parents took care of all of their children's education. And Malak studied the sacred scriptures, classical philosophy, and Persian poetry and literature. In addition, she spoke 3 languages, Persian, Arabic, and Kurdish, and she played 2 musical instruments, the tambour and the setar. Malak's family cultivated an intimate and highly spiritual and intellectual environment where all were encouraged and all were treated equally. After her father's passing, her elder brother, Ostad Elahi, became her mentor. He was a magistrate, a philosopher, a virtuoso of the tambour, and just as his father, a profound, revered spiritual thinker, well respected beyond his region. But most of all, he was a source of spiritual inspiration and became the determining factor in Malak's young training. For her, he was a spiritual pole, an accomplished wise man who accepted to become her guide on the path to perfection. Through meditation and constant spiritual search, progressively, Malakian's personality began to take a more definite form, and she translates her quests into actions. There was a lot of need around her, so she sought to help others by sharing her modest resources. She provided daily meals for the many visitors, she distributed food on a weekly basis from her home, and she received those who, having heard about her wisdom and generous spirit, came to get her advice, comfort, financial or emotional support. Furthermore, she refused to blindly accept principles turned into dogmas. I would not believe what other people said unless I understood it myself. These are her words, reasserting the independence of each person to advance through its own spiritual path. This is remarkable, particularly considering the devotion that she had for her brother and father. By 1965, she had established informal weekly classes. While her original idea was to teach the profound philosophical concepts that she had mastered, instead she customized the classes for the mentality of the participants. At first, these classes were made up of women and focused on simple ways to improve their lives. So, for example, she taught them the importance of washing one's hands or the harm of using profanity, these type of things. Later, as her pupils' minds expanded, she imparted more radical concepts, such as the need for self-reliance and the value of maintaining financial independence. Men also began to attend her classes, so she used her spiritual authority to defend more specifically women's rights. Stemming from her fundamental belief in justice and equality, Malakian viewed the oppression of rights as an obstacle to personal development. So she used her wisdom, position, and immense tolerance to patiently help people evolve. This was not easy, as these inequalities were deeply ingrained in the mentalities of everyone in a region where insulation and primitive survival conditions made evolution a very difficult and slow process. Instead of accepting the traditional donations to make offerings to the saints, she created a common fund to develop a system of interest-free microcredit so that the recipients of these monies could use them to buy agricultural tools, to set up little businesses, and things of this type. In a different line of action, she brought reforms to the Friends of Truth that contributed to women having the same dignity as that of men. Of course, this amounted to a revolution. During her lifetime, Malak meditated, practiced, assimilated, and transmitted the thought of her brother. It was he who showed her the way, and it is through him that she learned to know God. God is an experience. Don't concern yourselves with searching God. He is within you. These are her words. Ostad Elahi also emphasizes that we cannot know ourselves or police our souls unless we undertake the challenges and tensions of an active life that will serve to reflect our own image back onto us. Therefore, life in society is the most effective environment for discovering and purifying the true essence of the soul. According to him, the work required to progress towards perfection is very simple: saying good, seeing good, and wanting good. This is achieved through practice when you have an educated soul. So in line with the innovative philosophy of her brother, Malak pursued a rational and scientific approach to spirituality, centered on the acquisition of self-knowledge, greater discernment, and practice. At the core of Malak philosophy lies her personal exploration and respect for the rights and duties of all human beings. So we have reviewed some aspects of Malak life and her thought, a little bit of her philosophy reflected in the poem, how she's such a deep, careful thinker. But what sorts of ethics was she practicing? So as you probably know, there are three main approaches to ethical theory. The first is the ontology, which is sometimes referred to as duty ethics. The second is consequentialism, which is also called utilitarianism. And the last one is virtue ethics. The difference among them lays in the way that moral dilemmas are approached. So it doesn't lay on the answers. They may provide the same solution or not. But we can illustrate this with an example. Say, for instance, that a terminally ill person wants to be euthanized, and it is up to you to grant this wish. So according to the ontology, you will consider whether, in granting the person's wish, you would be conforming to some moral rules that seem intuitively correct. For example, most cultures have the commandment of do not kill, right? So the ontologists would think that we need to adhere to these rules, independently of the consequences. So for them, there are moral absolutes. Consequentialism, on the other hand, will consider the consequences of granting the person's wish. If the action produces the best overall outcome, then it is morally correct. So this is what we typically say, the ends justify the means. Virtue ethics, in my view, the school that is closest to Malak, is totally different. Because under this theory, the act would be desirable if it would be the kind of thing that a virtuous person would do. So here, virtue ethics differs in that the focus is upon being and not doing. It emphasizes the role of one's character and the virtues that one character embodies for evaluating ethical behavior. Virtue ethics is asking the question, what sort of person should I be? This will determine my actions, and as such, the decision will be made on a case-by-case basis, considering benefits and intentions, so whether the intentions are benevolent or malevolent. Virtues are moral principles discovered by reason and acquired by practice in a community of character. We first learn about morality, about what is good and what is evil, within a community of character, or family, or society, or friends, assuming that these are good characters and they are not dysfunctional, are communities of character where we learn moral principles. So at the heart of virtue ethics is the search for eudaimonia, a Greek word meaning something like flourishing, well-being, blessedness. This is the type of happiness that comes from a particular kind of character, from within, and from being a specific type of person. This is not the type of happiness you would get from winning the lottery or for getting lucky. Rather, it is related to what you bring to life, your attitudes and character traits. So eudaimonia describes that state achieved by the person who lives the proper human life and the outcome that is reached by practicing the virtues. Basically, what virtue ethics says is that if you master through practice, if you master within a community of character the ability to reason well, to handle day-to-day moral questions, then you'll have the ability to deal with these extreme cases too. This does not mean that it will be easy to make such decisions, nor that you will be happy at the end of these extreme cases, but at least you will keep a clear conscience, knowing that you made the best, most prudential, most virtuous decision possible under the circumstances. So to conclude, learning from virtue ethics and Malak's life will allow us to formulate some final thoughts about practicing ethics. Malak Nemati provides a unique example of a person who, through courage and intellectual conviction, set herself up for influencing changes in her milieu. Her weapon was ethical certitude, grounded on reflection and on her goal to grow in the hearts of those that came in touch with her. She was successful, but these achievements were not the result of submission to the norms and the expectations of the times. Quite to the contrary, she confronted and challenged the religious, intellectual, administrative, labor and employment practices that prevailed out of the passive acceptance of tradition, perpetuating inequality and injustice. The question is now posed to us. Are we able to position and align our thoughts, feelings, and actions with respect to the fundamental tensions and dogmas of our own times? Do we act to generate the common good? As women, do we request equality of opportunity and treatment? As men, are our loyalties to the rights of our mothers and sisters more important than our own self-interests? Are we able to see and defend our own dignity and that of every other human being? How do we gather the courage it takes to stand up? How can we grow up to ourselves? Malak Nemati emphasized substance over dogma and inner truths over external forms. She also liked to remind us, life is not short, but time is limited. It is never too soon to gain consciousness, to think better, to feel better, to treat ourselves and others better, and to do things better. In sum, to live a better life and to enjoy a fairer world. Let us not wait. We can start this practice today. Thank you very much.